Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're here. It's actually, where I live in San Diego, California. It's actually a super nice day outside. It's the sun's coming up, and I think the weather is going to be into the 70s, maybe low 80s today in January. So it's a good day in San Diego, at least. It's too bad we're all locked down. But yeah, I think it's, gives me a little hope after, the last week and a half. America's, been dealing with a lot of stuff, and we have another 5 days of dealing with stuff, and maybe things will get better after that. So anyway, welcome to the show. This is the number 12, and I'm pleased to say that, my guest today, fellow musician and coder, Brady Gaster, for Microsoft. So we're going to be talking to him in just a few minutes. If you want to email me, there's my new email address for Rockin The Code World and CSharpCorner. So please always emailing me your questions or comments or suggestions or anything you want to email me. It's easy to do. It doesn't cost you a thing. So, okay, let's get going. So I, my world conference tour this year is called, for those about to code, Worldwide Tour 2021. I'm guessing that most of it will be virtual like it was last year. Hopefully towards the end of the year, we'll be getting out and doing some live conferences, and I can't wait to do that. I've been going through speaking withdrawal for almost a year now, so I'm really looking forward to that. So if you want to see where I'm going, or if you want to request me to speak, please go to that URL and fill out the form, and I'll be happy to speak at your event this year, virtual or in person, as soon as I get the shot in my arm, which as of the news the last couple of days, who knows when that will be. But okay. So guess what? My PowerPoint's running a little slow today. So my brand new book is out as of yesterday. It's called David McCarter, Rock Your Code, Coding Standards for Microsoft.NET. And I'm really happy to announce this book. I've been working on it for a big chunk of last year. It features 130 new pages of information and updated, and it's completely geared towards Visual Studio 2019 and .NET 5. So I'd like to say with that is I'm going to leave the older version up, the 6th edition, because that is the one that's focused on .NET Core and the CLR. But this one and going forward will only be the new frameworks. So anyway, it's all available on Amazon.com right now in print. And I hope you go and pick up a copy. And if you pick up a copy or buy one for your friend, they can get a free copy of CodeRush from DevExpress just for purchasing the book. So there's where you can go to get the book. I hope you'll check it out. It's all my books are a labor of love because there's no money in it, really. I do it for you guys and to help you guys out. And so I don't have to look at spaghetti code. So anyway, new book. We have same giveaways as we've had recently. Everybody is going to win a copy of CodeRush from DevExpress, and at the end of the show, I'll give away some CSharpCorner swag to the first person who can answer the question. And so I kind of have every Saturday I wake up and try to figure out the question I'm going to ask you. So I've dedicated that, all the questions this year will come from my book. So if you pick up a copy, you can win some free stuff. Okay. So pay attention at the end, and you can win some CSharpCorner stuff. I have a brand new article that just came out yesterday on CSharpCorner. It's all about code quality with open source projects. And I had a previous article where I reviewed a bunch of open source projects, including some from Microsoft. But I've decided to start doing these just one-off articles on specific frameworks. and code review them like dotNetDave would do, and give a honest review of the code, pointing out, places in the code that need to be, refactored and or fixed to meet coding standards. And the first one is this package that I'm actually using at work to import and export CSV files through ASP.NET. And this was a package that my team member found, and we started using it. And then when I started looking into it, I was finding a lot of issues with the code itself. And so anyway, it has a code quality rating of 8.08, which means there's a violation every 8.08 lines of code, which is not good. So the lower number, the worse it is really about the project. So I hope you'll read the article. I tried to pick out common things that I see developers doing over and over again incorrectly. And the other thing I'd like to point out with this, and we did talk a little bit about this yesterday on the Growth and Mindset show with Mahesh, and that is, when you put something on open source, and especially when people start downloading it and using it like we are in my team, it's really your responsibility to make sure that your open source project has all the proper things. And I mean by, code quality, coding standards, documentation, because, not only are you, putting the code out there for somebody to use, but I think a lot of people forget that this is really representing you, right, as a developer. And, when I look at code bases and it just looks like a bunch of spaghetti code, that's not going to go very well on my opinion of that developer. And I was thinking about this morning, and that even is more important, like when you go for interviews, right? Because, when you interview in front of me, I research you, before you come in on the interview. I research social media, I research, any repositories you might have out there, and start, getting to know you via that. And if you're putting out really bad examples of coding on public repositories, it's not going to go well for you in the future when you're trying to find your dream job. So anyway, to me, coding has always been a passion is a passion of mine, of course, but it's also, I want to be proud of what I put out there, and I want to be proud of my accomplishments. And part of that is following common standards and things, and documentation and things like that. So anyway, enough about that. But anyway, I hope you check it out. It's got almost 1,000 reads I checked this morning in one day. All right. And everybody wins a copy of Code Rush from DevExpress. Code Rush has been around since the beginning of Visual Studio pretty much. And it's the only refactoring tool that I've ever used in Visual Studio. Well, I did try ReSharper once, but I went back to Code Rush. So anyway, I use this every day that I'm coding, and it really helps me to be not only I can code faster, but it helps me actually learn things too. So, in our day, we talked about this yesterday on the show, we learn all the time, and, you can't stop learning. If you don't want to learn, you're in the wrong job being a software engineer. So anyway, I hope you check it out. It's free. It's a real copy. It's not a fake, stripped down version. It's a real copy of Code Rush. So I hope you go check it out. And with that, we're on to our guest, Brady Gaster. He is a principal program manager in the developer division at Microsoft, where he works on Signal R, microservices, HTTP APIs, integration with Azure service teams, in hopes to make it exciting for developers to work on. And he also learns coding with his two sons, which I think is really cool. And he also is a musician like myself, and plays guitars and synthesizers. And so maybe we'll talk some about that at the end if we have time. So with that, I'd like to bring Brady on the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing pretty good. Just wishing we had the same kind of weather you have up here. So.
Oh,
nice
are you?
but it's pretty cold. So
yeah, you're in Seattle, right?
Just outside. I'm in Sammamish. So yeah.
Well, you're always welcome down here in sunny California anytime you want. So
nice. I appreciate that. I love it down there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I live about a mile from the beach, so
Oh, wow.
it's always nice where I live.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, the weather here is pretty awesome, and
Nice.
like I don't even have an air conditioner, and until the last few years with global warming, I rarely even turned on my heater. I think I've gone years without turning on my heater at all.
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah. Ours is on 6 months of the year pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But we do pay for it because it's freaking expensive to live here. So you pay for it one way or the other, I guess.
That's for sure.
So how are you doing? How's everything going with you and Microsoft, the restrictions,
Things are good. I've been in this room pretty much since March. Things have been, we're in the same situation. It seems like it got started here pretty quick with the rest time situation and like things kind of taken off. But our governor was really good. He kind of locked things down early. We definitely got a lot of programs. Microsoft has really been supportive. We get an email once a week from our, basically our, the person who takes care of us from on the HR side, and it's just a very supportive email. And what's really nice about it is that he kind of describes like he walks through our worldwide progress on reaching zero. He walks through things going on locally. He literally goes through each region in which we have folks and like gives guidance. And then there's stories in those emails that are just fantastic. I'm hard of hearing. I have like a serious hearing deficit. So at one point, one of the emails included something. I think somebody in Microsoft, I don't want to say invented, but they got involved with the idea of making clear masks for folks like me who read books. And I replied to him and I just said, this is and this is cool. Like when the director of people stuff at Microsoft emails you, and then you reply to them and you say, like, I'm just some PM, this really was inspiring to me because I'm hard of hearing and my team lets me sit at the head of the table so I can read all the lips in the room and, know what's being talked about. So a mask like this is, really, really, cool. He replied and he added the people who did it. So it's like, cool. It's really cool to like be connected with people who are like trying to make our world better like that. So it's really cool. It's nice.
Yeah. That sounds cool. And, I'm hard of hearing too, but that's because I've gone to too many freaking concerts.
That's probably got something to do with it.
Yeah. Well, it does have something to do with it, and practicing every weekend in my practice room, that doesn't help either, because I think my amps are tuned to about 90 decibels. So,
oh wow.
Yeah, and I have 3 amps, so I play through 3 amps at one time, and I kind of stole that idea from the guitarist in Tool. Because that's what he does. Yeah. He always plays through 3 amps, 2 guitar amps.
He stands right in the center of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Two normal amps and 1 bass amp, and that's exactly what I have.
Nice.
And I have the amp set up, in my room, so it creates this really kind of cool surround sound kind of thing, cool. With only 1 guitar.
Right.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, and especially doing photography for bands. I mean, when I do photography for bands now because of my hearing. I have to wear earplugs because, when you're in the pit at a concert, you guess what? You're standing right in front of the speakers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You should meet one of my colleagues. He's one of the developers on Playwright here in DevDiv. He actually lives in Slovenia. He's also a music photographer. He's photographed Mark Knopfler. He's photographed like a whole bunch of people like really, really close up and met folks and stuff. He'd be a good person to have on the show too. He's also a guitar player. So you guys could talk about that stuff all day. I bet. Very cool.
Yeah. I've been doing, concert photography and working for bands since the 80s. And
nice.
I actually got started with, the #1 heavy metal band, back in the 80s in San Diego. And that's how I got my start doing photography and working for bands and being like the roadie. And I was like the bass player's roadie, including doing photography and stuff like that. And
that's cool.
And then after the show, it was kind of like the bouncer because I was bigger than everybody else. And so, I kept people out that weren't supposed to be back in the dressing room. And yeah. Fun
Yeah.
days of the 80s.
Oh yeah. I was up here the other day. Every musician and programmer has at least one wire tub, tub full of nothing but cables. You know what I mean? So I'm up here like the third time that day, like reorganizing the cables, and rewiring my desk, and setting all my synths up and everything. It was kind of over the holidays, trying to get everything going for the new year. I went downstairs and I told my wife, I said, 48 years old, I've figured out what I want to do when I grow up. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a roadie. And she was like, that's perfect. You should have done that like a long time ago.
No, you don't want to be a roadie, let me tell you.
I'm sure. It's a hard life. Yeah.
Oh, it's not a life I would want to have,
Well, I bet.
Maybe being the rock star, I could dig that, but
Yeah.
not being the roadie,
That's cool.
That's not a glamorous job,
Yeah, doing the shows at Microsoft. A lot of the stuff that I did for a number of years wasn't necessarily being on the stage. It was actually backstage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on backstage at a big Microsoft event, and I was backstage one day, and I'm always talking to the guys because they're all musicians too, so we're having a couple conversations about gear and headphones and like whatever else. And I get to the airport, and I think it was in Orlando. I get to the airport and I see one of those dudes at the airport, and he's got his big cases and he's carrying all this stuff around, and I was like, so we started chatting again. I said, so, is this all you do? And he goes, well, I do shows too. Like I do concerts as well. And I was like, what do you prefer? And he was like, oh, definitely the Microsoft things. He goes, they're way bigger. There's more to do. You guys are like so on us, like we have to like stay on our toes, like at a concert, it's like go do this, and then you go wait. So it was pretty cool. He said those conferences are a little bit more lucrative for them as well. I guess they have a bigger budget, so I would surely think that something like the Scorpions would have a bigger budget than like a Microsoft show, but he was like, no.
No, probably not these days, because they have it so stripped down and so down to just exactly who they need, and a lot of concerts I've been to, photographing lately, is that the more and more the roadies are doing multiple things, and like even some of the latest concerts I've been to, like the same guys doing lights and sound at the same time.
Oh wow.
And
That's
so they've
cool.
no, because I used to do lights, for shows, and that's a full-time job just in that, but to try to worry about the sound at the same time, I mean,
that's not cool. That's like way too much work to do for one person. That's not.
That's too much work. And I see those guys; they all look pretty stressed out.
Oh yeah, they're all frazzled. And it's funny, like people are like, "Well, is it stressful back there?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but like everybody backstage at one of these events, like I actually think this is one of the most fun things to talk about working at Microsoft, is like these big events, like what goes on to like make them happen. Somebody asked me one time, they said, of all the things you've done, what was the thing that most prepared you to work at Microsoft? And I said, we have to think about what I do at Microsoft. I'm like backstage doing these things, like that's more fun than like being on stage with wide margin, but there's two things about it that are interesting. And that is that like after you do it a few times, like the people that are back there, they kind of develop this, the best way I can think of to describe it is like this optimistically temporary attitude. It's like, like everybody's like this, but like you get backstage and all of a sudden you're kind of in this zenful place because you've got an hour, and like the last 2 months, this is all that's mattered, and it's going to be done in an hour. And it's like, like developers don't have a job where they can like be done at 5 and go home. They just like work, you know what I mean? So to like have a thing where you're like, all right, we're done, let's get a drink.
Let's go out.
Really nice. It's cool. So,
well, I hope all the backstage people aren't drinking like they are at concerts, So
no, there's none of that, dude. You would be spotted in a second. Like,
I know.
Yeah, that would not work out. And you never know. That's the other thing. Like somebody said, what job did you do that prepared you? And I said, throwing concerts. And they said, that's weird. You're like a PM and you work with devs and stuff. Like, how did doing concerts like prepare you for your job at Microsoft? And I'm like, if you run concerts, you have to be prepared for things that you have no idea when they're coming. And like Microsoft is like that, like we have a bajillion customers, we have a bajillion products, we have all these different things. And it's like, you always have to be on your toes, and I kind of feel like, being at those things backstage at music events really, really kind of prepared me for like the long hours of travel.
Mhm.
You know, that's another one, you know what I mean? So it's like the past year has been great for that because like I get to hang out with my family. You know, I do miss traveling, but nobody misses being in airports, you know.
No,
So,
I hate the flying part.
the
Yeah,
flying part's
no,
terrible. Yeah.
no, I hate it. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, you know, you're kind of making me think about, you know, the backstage stuff. Oh, you know, probably at conferences, it's probably similar to concerts, and that is, you know, before the show starts, there's a lot of stuff going on. You know, people are stressing out, making sure everything is in the right place and turned on and whatever. And once the show starts, it's actually pretty easy from there, right? And you know, the only thing like I had to do as a roadie back then is I had to constantly be looking at the stage of things, mics falling off the drums, or you know, something happening with the guitars, and I would have to run out there and fix it, you know, within just a couple seconds and run back off the stage, you know. And so that, you know, that was probably the only stressful part of the show itself, was that part, and making sure the, you know, performers, you know, stuff was always working, and you know, we didn't want to stop the show just because of something broke. And as far as when I was a roadie, I don't think we ever did that. So
that's cool. Yeah, ours, the only thing that's really stressful for our shows, especially the big keynotes, you know, just like you and I, you know, when we're doing our shows, or we're presenting at user groups or in front of 100 people or twitching or whatever, you know, we go off script. You know, we'll like, oh, I got this crazy demo, let me see if it works, you know, and you like pull it out and you try it out and whatever, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, executives do that too.
Yeah.
And the people who build the machines, sometimes they'll hear something backstage like, oh, you know, let me try this thing. And they'll say, like, whatever tool you have not installed on the computer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for just about a second, everybody backstage is like, uh-oh, you know, and then the person who's on stage, they've been us before too. So they know like it doesn't always go well, and they can recover from it. But like just for a second, there's 100 people backstage going, uh-oh, who's getting fired? You know what I mean? So, but
well,
we've seen some of that, but it always ends well. It always ends well. So
yeah, and I'm not talking about pop shows, because pop shows to me are just like the worst waste of your money. But if you go to see real bands like Aerosmith and, you know, people like that, you know, now I completely forgot where I was going with that. Yeah, and I know what I was going to say, and I hope I don't upset Microsoft, but you know, when you watch a Microsoft demo, there's actually one or two people behind the scenes mirroring what that person's doing in the demo. So if something happens, you can quickly switch over and the audience doesn't know.
I have seen shows like that before. I have seen that before. Yeah. And that's that typically is called shadowing. And it's not like you're doing it for them. You're doing it like, you know, if you look at, I've seen this so many times, you know, like somebody's presenting, the mouse will freeze, the video card will flip out, something happens. There's an A/B button, you know, like on stage, and they can hit that button. I have this too. Like I usually bring a second machine because, hey, you know, you never know what's going to happen. The difference between me bringing a second machine and like something like an executive keynote is like they might need to basically like push the button and continue going with their demo. So in some of those shows, you'll have somebody who's basically making sure that second machine is ready at all times, and that just basically means sitting there and moving the mouse like every couple of seconds to make sure the machine's still awake. Sometimes you'll open a browser window or something like that to get that machine ready, just in case like they have to hit the A/B button. But it's really good to have that A/B button there. You know? That's like a good thing. So.
Well, yeah, I think this week I was watching, after this, we'll change the topic. Sorry, guys. We're geeking out on music. But, you know, this week I was watching. So one of my latest guitar purchase was actually the first electric guitar I bought in 15 years. And I bought the signature model from Mark Tremonti.
Oh, cool.
But that's Alter Bridge. Okay. I was watching a video the other day with the guitars from Disturbed. Because I play a lot of their songs. Cool. And you know, I've known bands do, you know, they have a backup, you know, system, you know, for the guitars and everything backstage. but he actually plays with 2 backup systems.
Oh wow.
And they showed them, and they showed the racks, and the racks were identical.
Yeah.
You know, and all they have to do is push a button and boom, it works. Right. They don't have to do anything else than that, you know.
Yeah. I have seen it as specific as you get, like, if you're a demoer, you get handed 2 machines, like let's say it's the Surface demo. You're given 2 machines to prep on. You get to take them home, you know what I mean, for like 2 or 3 days before the show. There's a blue one and a red one, and the blue one is your primary and the red is your backup. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, that they tell you, try to really only use the backup. You know what I mean? Like use the backup, get used to it. Try the primary like once or twice, but don't mess with the primary.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure, you know what I mean? So it I've only seen it like once or twice where we've like had to like use the backup environment. One of my demos, we had to do that once. That was a little hairy. But you know, I mean, people spend a lot of money to go to those conferences. You want to give them a good show. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. They are pretty expensive, you know, and they're probably just going to be worse once we get back, you know, to doing live conferences.
Oh man, the first couple in-person conferences are going to be so awkward.
I know, because I'm out of practice now.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, and when I speak, it's not like most people speak, and so it's a whole production kind of, and yeah, I'm going to have to get back into it. You know, I much prefer speaking in public far better than being online. But yeah, you're right. We've all gotten used to online, and then the first time we're going to go out there and we're going to go, because you can't talk, you know, in person like you do here. Yeah, you know, it's completely different.
You can have all kinds of things waiting in the wings if you're doing something virtual like this, you know. But when you're on stage, you're just like, you know, it's the kimono.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So we don't have any questions yet, but hello from UK. Somebody wrote. That's cool.
Hey.
So what are you you know, most working on it in the developer division at Microsoft now?
What I work on is it's kind of an interesting story. Like on paper, I am the SignalR PM. So I've been a SignalR fanboy for probably 8 years now. I do a lot of demos with SignalR. I've written some of the docs for SignalR. I've done quite a bit with it. I am not a dev on the team. So I just have so much respect for those members of the team and like all the stuff that they do for it. They really make a great product. But recently I've been kind of expanding what I do. I'm kind of the Azure guy on the team. Wearing my Azure t-shirt right now. But I tend to work a lot with the different Azure partners. So I work with like app service partner that I've been working with a lot recently. Jeff Holland from the Functions team and the folks on his team doing a lot of stuff with Functions and the Azure SignalR service. Then my favorite place where I'm spending a lot of time right now is on Web API and HTTP APIs. And you'll probably hear me say Web API less than you'll hear me say HTTP API, because I know that like Steve Smith has written this cool API endpoints thing out there. You can do HTTP APIs with .NET just using a startup CS file, for crying out loud. It doesn't always have to be Web API. Just Web API is kind of like, it's been there forever. You know what I mean? And then we've also got Azure Functions. I work a lot with Azure Functions folks. But really kind of where I'm pivoting right now is working a lot with those Azure teams to like help. It's kind of called an end-to-end role. It's an end-to-end PM roles. Essentially what I do is I will talk to a lot of customers. I'll watch the boards. I'll watch, you know, the different pieces of feedback that we're getting, watch Twitter. Hansman will send me people sometimes. Damien will send me people sometimes. And essentially my main role is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the .NET developer community has a great experience building apps on Azure. You know, there's a gentleman I work with, Dan Taylor. Dan Taylor does that for Python devs. Brian Holt does it for JavaScript Node devs. And then Osser does it for Java. And then we have a couple of other folks that we work with in the docs team. But the idea is to really kind of look at that developer experience and make sure we're doing everything we can. We know we can't get it perfect. You know, nothing's perfect. Software's never finished. But we want to do everything we can to make it easy. And where I really focus my efforts is on REST APIs, HTTP APIs, I'm doing a lot of work with the runtime team right now to a lot of help from Maria, who kind of drives that crew. And one of the things that we're doing is really trying to double down on things like open API investments, Swagger, if you like know from the John's old name. But we want to make it not necessarily, we've done a pretty good job of making it easy for people to build APIs, but what we want to do is make it easy for people to build APIs that they can then use with other products like Power Platform, like Logic Apps, like API management in Azure. Folks who are running their stuff in AWS, for instance, I know that they use a product called Swagger Hub, and it has a great way to integrate with Open API. But .NET developers have not always had a great way to do Open API. There's a great open source package or two. There's three that I can think of off the top of my head. Probably the most popular one is Swashbuckle. Then there's a second one, NSwag. The people that build the NSwag product, they actually have like a desktop thing you can install to like help you design your APIs. They've got some good stuff. And then there's a new project you might have heard of called Carter. The Carter project. It kind of feels a little bit like Nancy felt on Nancy FX. But they've got really great support for Open API just built right in. And all that stuff's really important because, like, you remember the WSDL days, you could just generate your description. With that comes bad descriptions. You know what I mean? With that, like, it's great when you can write code and generate the description from your code, but that doesn't always mean that your API is clean. So what I'm trying to do is to find open source packages out there like the three I already mentioned. I'm just going to set up a meeting with Steve Smith to look at his API endpoint stuff in the future. So I'm just kind of looking across that entire API landscape. Claire Novotny on the team has recently, or not even recently, it's kind of an older project called Refit. If you haven't heard of Refit, I'd encourage you to look at Claire's GitHub project. It's a really clean way to basically create clients to talk to your REST APIs rather than having to like know all the HTTP stuff. You can look at Refit, and Refit can like make a lot of that stuff elegant for you. And then there's another project called API versioning that's out on GitHub, and it's a great way to like enable HTTP API versioning in your web APIs. That's something that like no dev really thinks about, but like
because it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah,
I've done it 10 years ago, and it's not easy.
It's not easy. So I'm starting to look at those projects and figuring out how we can work more closely with those projects. I don't want to like ingest them into the runtime because that means we have to maintain it now, and that's like a lot of work, and we don't have a big team. So like people think that like there's a lot of people on the .NET team. I think the Sigma team is like 3 people. Wow. The whole runtime team is like 26, 27 people, and that's like web API, the whole thing, like everything.
Wow.
And that's ASP.NET side. Sorry. But if you just it's a very nimble, very small team, and we're going as fast as possible. But those edge cases, like they get hard. API versioning is not an easy thing to do, and I'm trying to figure out, talk to devs, do customer research. That's one of the other things I do is I interview a lot of customers and just watch them use our tools, watch them use our runtime, and ask them like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Tell me about this. I think I have 10 videos of customers reading our docs and trying them out that I have to go watch over the weekend. You know what I mean? And that stuff, like, I encourage every dev out there, like, don't like teach somebody how to use your stuff. Just give it to them and watch them use it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, like I never thought of that. I never thought anybody would do that. So that's been a lot of my focus over the last year, is literally just watching people use the .NET framework, .NET 5, all those things with Azure, asking them why they're doing the things they're doing, figuring out what their pain points are, figuring out what they would love to have, figuring out what they absolutely do not want us to build, and then really working with a lot of different open source projects, because there's so much greatness in the open source community that like people in Microsoft community don't know about. It's just, we for a long time, we talked about how we wanted to be more open. Now we are more open. And a lot of our community is like, well, I still want the Microsoft logo on everything I do. Right. Like, you're going to have to wait a little while. That takes time. Richie's been working on Swashbuckle for 8 years. Rico's been working on NSwag for about the same amount of time, if not more. These projects are not quick projects. Yeah. So, it's great that we can, be hand in hand with the community and like using their stuff as well. So.
So I I do have a comment though, now that you've said something about engaging the users of SignalR and things like that you work on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is, and I hope you guys take it to the right way, but developers of Microsoft kind of live in a bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they live in the Microsoft bubble, and they don't really know how we're dealing with it in the trenches every day. And I've always felt there's been a disconnect, and I know the MVP program has helped with that. I'm not sure how much it helps with it now, but so how do you engage people that are working in the trenches every day to look at these kind of things to help you out in your job?
Oh, there's a lot of tools we can use for that. First and foremost, Hanselman has this phrase that he says called dark matter developers. There's a lot of people out there that they're not on social media. They're too busy working. They're not into it. Whatever reason here. So those folks are kind of hard to reach. Like if they don't want to be reached, like it's hard to reach them. So the first thing the first way I would answer that question is, I'm going to isolate my answer to people who want to be reached.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anybody out there who doesn't think that you're making yourself available to us, please do so, because we really, really, really want to hear from you.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do is I have a lot of columns in my tweet deck, and I have an entire monitor dedicated to it. And all of the columns are things on which I work. So Azure and .NET, I have the .NET column, I have the SignalR column, the ASP.NET column, and I watch those kind of a lot. Like if I see it tick, I'll look over. If it's important, I'll ping somebody. I know that some of the other PMs, some of the community PMs do the same thing. We're shooting stuff to each other all day. Like, you talk about being prepared for things. I probably spend about 3 hours a day reacting to stuff. So, and it's just like, you just have to be on it. Customers need your help, so that's the first way. Social media is absolutely fantastic for that. I don't really do LinkedIn scouring. I've tried to take lessons from people on that. I'm just terrible at it. So
LinkedIn doesn't seem to be really, Twitter, I think, would be the best way to, like you do. And you use TweetDeck, and that's all I use too on my computer. It's TweetDeck because of what you just said, the columns, and you can always see what's going on and stuff like that.
I try to keep it to like 8 columns, because then I start getting anxiety.
It's too much.
Too much. It's like too much signal, but that's the first way. The second way is we have this amazing team in the developer division, and pretty much every org has a team like this that we call and it's kind of an odd name for it. We call it the UX research team. They don't always do UX. In fact, a lot of them don't do UX. It kind of started that way because that's the user experience folks. And you have to every single thing in DS goes through this board. You know what I mean? And they're like, you should move that over there. We don't really do this way. We don't put a tree view in that, whatever. But there's a lot of those details. But the other thing the UX research team does that's fantastic is they have this very rigorous set of processes that they go through. So they have groups that they work with, internal and external, who have hordes of customers that just want to give feedback. They might not be interested in social media. They might not be interested in being rock stars, but they're very interested in the product, and they're very interested in telling Microsoft what they think. Some of these people are more outspoken than others. So what they do is I'm thinking of one company that we'll reach out to, and we'll say, we need customers that match the following profile. And there's like a series of questions. There's a screener we give them essentially, and like people will answer those questions. And there's a lot of people in their database, so they'll reach out to the folks. The folks will do the survey, and then some of those folks will say they want to talk to us. And if they match the profile, we'll talk to them. So I'll work with my guy, his name's Chuck. So I'll work with Chuck. Chuck will set up interviews, and we'll sit with these folks for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'll usually have a script that I want them to walk through. I have a set of things I want them to do. In the beginning, every PM does this. They'll give them step by step they want them to do. And then you ask the customer, what do you think? And the customer goes, oh, it's cool. I learned a lot. It's like, darn, that's not why you're here. So then you have to kind of back up and you have to have a little bit of schadenfreude with it, because sometimes you're putting something in front of a customer that they might not ever see again. It's like you're trying the feature out. There's no doc for it because it's not released yet.
Right.
There's no way for them to figure out how to use it from asking a friend because they haven't seen it yet. So like we have to sit there, So what you do is you come up with these hypotheses. Like I hypothesize that a customer will be able to right-click publish an application to app service in 5 minutes or less without me telling them how to do it.
Right.
So then we watch them, and at 5 minutes, I go, "That's invalidated." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we tell them how to do it. You know what I mean? And it's not that we're mean. It's just like we want to see what you're doing because we want to create a pit of success.
Right.
And if you watch the despair happen, then you know what not to do. So there's a couple ways. The other ways we actually have, and I encourage everybody to go look at the site, usertesting.com. If you go to usertesting.com, you can create a profile, and they kind of do the same thing. They'll send out, if I say I'm a web API developer, if somebody wants to do a web API test, my name will pop up. And then they'll email me and they'll say, does this look like something you want to do? I say yes, no. And then they basically say, turn on your camera, and you turn on the camera, and they give you the script, and you walk through it, and you talk about what you're doing as you're doing it. And there's a lot of people in usertesting.com. Some of those, it's not just Microsoft, studies. It's like, everybody does these things. Usertesting.com is a service that companies like Microsoft use to test their stuff on camera. And it's really cool because you're not in the room with those people, and they are really honest. And I've got, like I said, I've got 10 of those in my inbox right now. And I think I got those 10 happened like almost simultaneously because we launched a screener, and it's something a lot of ASP.NET developers do that we want to make easier. So we had a lot of respondents very quickly. I think we launched that survey at like 4 p.m. and I think I had all 10 by 8.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
we have a lot of different ways. It's exhausting. I want to be honest with you. Like watching that stuff is exhausting because you think everybody thinks their product is awesome.
Yeah.
And then you see somebody use it and you're just like, like, how did I not do that?
Yeah. And that's, besides just the coding part, you can always tell a program that was developed just by a developer, right? Because they're usually hard to use, they're usually pretty ugly, and, it's because and that's why when people say, well, why can't you test your stuff? And I go, are you kidding? I know how it works.
Right.
So, I'm not going to break it the way you're going to break it because I wrote the damn thing,
exactly.
And so why are you asking me to test my stuff?
Exactly.
That's just wrong.
Right.
And
devs don't think of a test the way like a user acceptance test is. You know what I mean? Like a UAT test is not the same thing as a developer test.
Right.
A developer test is does 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
1,000 times.
Yeah. And so, I wish more companies would kind of do the whole testing thing a little better. And not only that, but invest time into automated testing and things like that. I would love to see how they test Visual Studio someday. I'd love to know how they do that, especially when they release a patch one day after the last one, and I'm going, well, wait, what's your testing suite? You were able to release Visual Studio one day. Come on.
Right.
I want to see what you guys are doing. But
that's we could talk all about that. I could even have one of our researchers send you a thing. Maybe we get you in a study and have you give us some feedback. That'd be cool.
Well, we did get a question, so I kind of want to do that. But before we move off of this, I want to, if anybody at Microsoft is watching this besides you, you have a whole army of MVPs out there that are more than willing to help you with this kind of stuff. So reach out to us, especially now during the pandemic. We don't have anything to do. We have lots of free time. We could be helping on things, but, quite frankly, I hardly ever hear from the MVP program anymore. So, so Microsoft, there's a lot of us out there who are vocal, and are willing to help, because my goal is always to make it as easy as possible for someone else to understand it. And in my whole career, even before I was, a full-time developer, I've always tried to put myself in the user's shoes, right? Whoever's using whatever I'm doing, right? And so one of the first apps I wrote was for mainly secretaries and stuff in the company. And so I tried to, when I was writing it, I kind of was pretending I was a secretary and how they would look at this and how to make it easier and things like that. And and a lot of developers don't have that skill. And I also will say, and I think this is just part of what happens, is that, the longer I'm a developer, it's harder for me to do that,
Oh yeah.
And in the early days, it was a lot easier for me to do than it is nowadays. It's tough, and that's why we need to have different teams and other people looking at things. But anyway, the question we got is, what's new and exciting coming out from SignalR in the near future?
New stuff from SignalR. The main thing I can think of that we have kind of on the books right now is we are working on a C++ client for it. Brennan Conroy on our team is actually knee deep working on a C++ client for it. That's actually the biggest thing I can think of that we've been working on for a while. We're working on it for a couple of different partners inside of Microsoft, as well as some folks outside of Microsoft who've wanted it. Another thing is we've talked a lot about, I want to be very clear how I say this. I'm going to say it slowly because I've been misunderstood on this a few times. We have been asked by a lot of customers, both internal and external. And when I say that, I mean like Microsoft partners, like Teams is one of our customers. Let me think of another customer. A couple of different phone apps are our customers. There's a lot of people inside of Microsoft who use SignalR inside of other products, like Blazor.
Yeah, Blazor. Yeah.
But one thing that we've been asked quite a few times is, I want a iOS client. I want a native iOS client. So we say, well, do you want it in Swift or do you want it in Objective-C? And like literally, we ask 50 people, 25 of them will say each one.
Yeah.
So we're like, this isn't helping, you know what I mean? And then what's interesting is like most of the people will say, and I will not use the other one. Like they're just flat out, I will not use the other one. I'm like, that's so weird. But I admit I don't know a lot about iOS native development. Okay, I don't know anything about iOS and nothing. I know I haven't tried it yet, which is on me. I should try it. But there's a fantastic, here I go again, open source client that was actually started by a gentleman who used to be on the SignalR team. And he maintains it. Whenever we do a release, he updates. Like he's passionate about his Swift SignalR client. And whenever somebody asks Fowler says you should use the Swift SignalR client that's already out there. Well, there are a lot of customers who can't or won't use something unless it has this logo on it. You know what I mean? So people have said, well, why don't you ingest that? Well, we don't like ingesting open source projects unless we have complete agreement from the
right.
So so one of the reasons that we wanted to put out a C++ client is we've actually talked to folks in the Objective-C community who say, well, if you give me a C++ client, then I can do whatever they need to do to produce a Objective-C client. So I'm like, I don't know how that works, but okay. And we know we have partners who want a C++ client and need a C++ client. So that's actually kind of that's one of the biggest things we're working on right now in SignalR that I can think of off the top of my head. Trying to think of anything else we're working on for 6. I can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment that we're working on big for SignalR and 6. We've talked about a bunch of stuff. But again, I'm going to be full transparent because my team will tease me if I'm not. Like SignalR is something that I PM, which means the devs who wrote it and who like do a great job on it, they ping me when they need a PM's help. They ping me when we need to work on the docs, which I've not been doing a good enough job of. Like they are, they're like, they love that product so much. Like they really only need me to kind of inject myself when they need like a decision made. We have a planning meeting next week. Darn it. Like, why couldn't we have had this show next week? Because the planning meeting was actually set up by one of the devs. He's like, hey, I want to talk about what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, because they know that I'm off doing this partner stuff. So I'm kind of like the member of the team who takes it from here, and then they go to Azure and they make sure that the Azure teams are they have what they need and whatever else. So I'm definitely more of the I'm not as involved in the triages and the scrums as I would like to be, but I'm also doing like other stuff as well. So the team is just doing a great job. I want to, this year I've kind of made a resolution to like re-inject myself into like every one of those meetings and to like try really hard to focus on that stuff, because we do have a lot of great stuff coming in 6. Last year it was really like dealing with all of this stuff, making sure the work at home thing was being enabled by the .NET on Azure stuff, all the partner work and everything else. So my apologies to my team. I have not been as present as I would like to be in the
it's tough,
the team room, what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's tough these days. I think all teams are going through this kind of
Mm-hmm.
growing pains or whatever. And even, in my team, early in the pandemic, I kept trying to get them to turn on their cameras so we can kind of pretend like we're actually in a room together. And I don't know if it's a difference between older developers and younger developers, but the younger ones just would not turn on their cameras.
Interesting.
I know. I thought it was really weird. That the generation of selfies and stuff like that don't want to turn on their cameras at work. And yeah, and so I gave up. I don't even try anymore. But yeah, it's tough. We're all learning how to deal with developing in the virtual world, and I wrote a couple articles right when the pandemic started about my hopes of what will happen from the pandemic as far as remote work goes and things like that. And so, the one good thing I could say, I won't say it's a good thing, but the one thing I think we've learned, during the last 10 months or so, is that working from home works. And in some cases better. I mean, Microsoft's even put out articles on how much more work they're getting with, done with all the people at home. And talking to, you and Richard last week and Scott Hunter and, Mads, it's pretty amazing you guys got, there wasn't a big slip in Microsoft 5. And that has to be a testament to you guys being able to, quickly switch and quickly get things together and quickly keep on schedule. I'm sure there's probably stuff you had to drop to keep on schedule, but you did.
Yeah.
And you came out when you were supposed to come out, and we're on track to get, done at 6 later in this year. And it's pretty cool,
To the individual who asked me that question, I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I have a meeting with my fantastic devs, Brennan and Halter, on Wednesday at 12:30. So I would encourage you to ping me on Twitter Wednesday at 1. And I will tell you what we talked about and what I think we've agreed on. So, because we literally just had like a brief little chat last week in triage, and one of the things we kind of came to the conclusion was, we've really rat-holed on the C++ client work. Like I said, we've got reasons we have to build that. You all got reasons. Then Brennan and the team, like, the other thing to remember is, like, the people who work on SignalR also wrote Kestrel. You know what I mean? Like, talk about how the guy backstage, or the person backstage, pardon me, was doing sound and lights at the same time. The people on our team are doing all those things at the same time. They work on SignalR. I think, like, there's the MVC room, and that's like the Web API, MVC, all those folks. They kind of concentrate on that stuff. Then there's the server room, and I work in the server room. And I would say, over there, you can ping Halter and you can ask him a question about SignalR or Kestrel or literally anything in there, because all the folks on the team, they rotate. You know what I mean? And there's reasons for that. Like, things, this product will stomp on that product. You got my bug in this, you never know. So
yeah, I wish more teams, even, at companies where I work, would rotate and, stuff like that. But because, problem when you don't rotate, I know you're talking maybe about something different, but, problem when you don't rotate is, now you have only one person in the company that knows how to do what happens. And, if they get COVID or they're, away on vacation, I mean, you're SOL, and so it's, I've always seen that problem. And I've never seen it really get that much better, especially now with smaller teams that, we mostly deal with these days.
Oh yeah. And most of the, I'm probably, I'll be completely candid with you. I have, I would probably argue I'm maybe the least technical ASP.NET PM. I'm passionate about the stuff, and I'm passionate about using it in Azure, and I know a lot about that side of stuff as well. But like folks like Sarab on my team, it's fun to be in a sprint with Sarab and, like, let's say a new dev who thinks Sarab's just a PM. Like Sarab can tell him everything about the HTTP stack. I mean, he can tell you everything about the way Kestrel works. He can tell you everything about the way, Bedrock works. He can tell you all those things. We have Damien, same way. You know what I mean? It's really great to work with those folks. You talk about imposter syndrome. It's kind of weird. Have you ever noticed that, like, developers as a general rule tend to be really, like, into accepting one another and like, you know, being cool with one another. But the only people that developers are not cool with is themselves. Like we are the hardest people on ourselves. And like, I'm totally that way. And being around those great individuals is painful sometimes. You know what I mean? But what's funny is like when you get one-on-one with any of them, they'll tell you the same thing. You know what I mean? Like it's just, we work with fantastic people that we all respect. And it's just, you know, sometimes it's hard to be in the room. So.
Well, it's, you know, it's, no, I forgot where I was going with that again. I had like 2 ideas floating around my head and they both gone. So
sorry.
we kind of have to wrap up anyway, because we're very short on time. And I really appreciate you being on the show. I hope to get you back on because I've really enjoyed this, you know, and I know we geeked out with music stuff in the beginning, but I hope people got some value in that, because, you know, as I always say, there's more than life than programming, right? And I know what I could say. Artists, you know, to be a great developer, you have to be creative. You basically are an artist in a way, right? And you and I are both artists in other ways too, like playing guitar, right? And, you know, I do photography and stuff like that. And I will tell you, I'm the worst critic on myself, you know, and even, you know, the intro song that I wrote, you know, for the show was really hard for me to do, because I was afraid of being judged, you know, and even the song I released last year, dedicated to my mom who passed away 4 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Again, that was another painful decision, because I didn't really want to put it out there, because, again, you know, being ridiculed or, you know, bad things saying against you for something you've worked so hard for, you know, and then to have somebody just tear it down in 1 second, it's tough, you know. So be positive, you know, accept each other. You know, we're all in this together. You know, we're not in a competition, really.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I think my favorite way to describe that, Hanselman's actually done a couple of conversations about imposter syndrome this week. And with all due respect to Hanselman, I love what he has to say about it. But my favorite way to like deal with imposter syndrome is something that Donna Sarkar said from the Windows team, and now from CA team. Donna said, you know, I look at something that I did and I look at what people do that like they really like the experts do, and I, you know, last week I did this thing and I was comparing like what I produced. That was like a Power BI dashboard or something like that, you know, and she was like, I was looking at my crappy Power BI dashboard and comparing it to like something that I saw like a Power BI expert doing, and then I realized like that's not what I should be doing. Like I'm learning this. What I should do is I should compare what I did this week to how bad it was last week.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be comparing how bad what I did this week is to like something that like the CVP of Power BI can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a fair comparison. So I would say like, in addition to being nice to other people, like try to be reasonable with yourself. Like that's something devs are not good at, or artists.
No. Yeah. We're definitely not good at that. And so yeah, we could talk about that's a whole nother show right there. But anyway, thanks for being on the show. I hope, like I said, I hope to get you back. I hope you stay warm up there. You're always welcome in San Diego, and maybe someday in the future we'll both be at the same conference and we can play guitars for the audience like I do. And some, you know, I'm lucky enough I get to go to India and play a guitar in front of 800 people and then smash it at the end and throw the pieces out. So you know, that is crazy fun.
That's cool. That's awesome. I love India so much. I've been there twice. I want to go back again so bad. Maybe I'll do it.
I love going to India too. And actually, when you said, you know, when you were just talking about how, you know, we need to, you know, accept each other and be nice to each other and stuff like that, you know, that's one thing I like being in India, because, you know, they're completely different than we are in America, and they're much more like that than we are here. And so it's nice, you know, to spend 5 days around people like that, you know, that don't have all these kind of things Americans do when it comes to those kind of things. So I hopefully have learned, I know I've learned, you know, I've been in India 3 times now, and I know I've learned a lot, you know, from being around those people, you know, while I'm there. And I do miss it. It's, you know, that's, if there's one country I really miss going to, is India for sure.
Yeah, I was there in October of 2019, and the folks that brought us over for the tour we did, it was a really awesome tour. I was there with Nish Anil. You should have Nish on the show.
Yeah.
But I was over there doing a 2-week tour, and the gent who took me over there said, well, like since effectively next year you would be the senior person coming, so like keep your October open. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I hadn't really thought about that. Like, this is not an easy trip, but I hadn't thought about it. But yeah, okay. And I was super excited. Not there. You know what I mean? So I hope I get asked again. It was really, really awesome. So
yeah, I don't think I'll make it to India this year, but I hope soon. Because I really miss all of my followers back there because they're so nice to me, and I really miss them. So anyway, thanks a lot. And if you want to hang out, we can chat a little bit afterwards. And I hope you have a great weekend with your sons. Teach them some code.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. My son just used make code to make a calculator, so I have to go see how that works. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. Thanks a lot. I'll
take care,
see you after the show.
Have fun.
Well, thanks everybody. That was an awesome interview. I know we geeked out on some music stuff and hearing loss and things like that, but this is where the show goes sometimes when I don't get a lot of questions. I just talk about what I want to talk about. So I hope you liked it. And I hope to have Brady back. All of my guests I want back so far I have on the show, because I've had a lot of fun doing these shows. And I've learned a lot, of course. And I hope you have too. This show is for you. Okay. So I know we're a couple minutes over time, so I'm going to do this quick. Like I said, all these questions are coming from my new book. I hope you pick up a copy. So here's the question for today. I think you have like 20 seconds to type the answer into the chat window, and then we'll pick the winner, and that's it. So anyway, what does the acronym DDD mean in software engineering? Dun, 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 dun. I hope you heard the sound, my Jeopardy guitar music. So what does DDD mean? If you know the answer, type it in, and we'll give the prize away to whoever answers it first. All right. So thanks for watching. I really enjoyed this show, and I really needed the distraction from everything going on in America right now. So next week, I'm really super excited about having Magnus Martinsson on from Sweden. He's a good friend of mine. I hang out with him every time I go to India, speaking of India, and I really miss Mads. And I'm sorry, Mads. Magnus. I'm sorry, Magnus. I really miss him, and he's always a pleasure to be around and talk to. And I always learn something from Magnus when I talk to him. So I hope you join me next week for that show. It's going to be fun. Also, please be safe. I say this every week, and I will keep saying it until the pandemic's over. But please listen to your professionals, and please stay safe. Don't go anywhere. Stay home. Wear a mask. Get the vaccine as soon as you can. I'm going to get it as soon as I can, but because of the shenanigans going on in America, who knows when that will be now. But anyway, please listen, because I want you back next week and next month and next year when I come speak in your country. And also something you can help, which doesn't cost you a penny except for your time, and that is go donate blood at your local blood bank. I'm donating again next Sunday, and every time I go there, they're in really dire need for blood because people just aren't donating in the normal numbers, because of COVID. So if you haven't donated blood, please give it a try. It makes me feel good every time I do it, and that's why I do it every 4 weeks. So do that. Email me your suggestions and requests to Rockin The Code World at CSharpCorner.com. And with that, I'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.